everything I did right today, where I used to program every night the things I did wrong. Wake up in the morning with a mind full of wrong things. Now I wake up in the morning with a mind full of principles. The 11th step comes in 3 parts. The first part says we seek through prayer and meditation. 1. 2, to improve our conscious contact with God. 3, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. The first part is what is prayer and what is meditation. The word prayer is a Greek word meaning to communicate. So I communicate with God, and He communicates with me, and I listen, and we call that meditation. I talk to God intellectually because that's my delivery system. He talks to me intuitively, and that's His delivery system. So here I listen to Him in my heart, and I get the message. Now, what do I pray for? For many years, I didn't believe that prayer worked. Everything I wanted in life, I never got, and I prayed for it. Everything I wanted in life, I never got. Prayer never seemed to answer my wants. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I told you that prayer doesn't work. I said I used to pray for all the things I wanted in life and never got a damn thing. And they said to me, God doesn't give a damn what you want. He only cares what you need. Do you need it or do you want it? Needs are wants are selfish and self-centered. I want, and I want more, and I want more, and I want. And God's not in the business of answering my selfishness, but He will fulfill my needs. Needs are requirements for living. And my cup floweth over. Now, here when the new Lincoln Town car came out, I wanted that car. I went to that damned agency 5 times. I took it on demonstration runs 5 times. I wanted it. But I had to ask myself, do I need it? And the answer is no, I don't need it. I've got a 94 Lincoln Town car with 60,000 miles on it, so I don't need it. But I sure the hell wanted it. But if I don't need it, I don't get it. So ladies, the next time you go to the mall, buy what you need and not what you want. And then come back and give all that money you're going to save to your husband. He'll know how to use it. Now, the second half of the 11th step says, to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. How do we do that? When I first came in, we had a fellow that used to always say, find God in the doorknob. And I thought, how ridiculous. What next are they going to think about? And after the meeting, I asked him, I said, where do you come off this thing with finding God in the doorknob? Okay? So 24 times that day he thought of God. And I said, what do? You pray? And he said, no, I don't have time to pray. I got work to do. And I said, what do? He said, I just try to get a vision of God and go on about my business. He said, that's all we have to do, a conscious vision of God. And the third part says, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. Now the question is, what is the knowledge of God's will for us? Remember the answers in the next step. So we have to go to the 12th step to find the answer to the knowledge of God's will for us. And it comes in 3 parts, the 12th step. And it says, after having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, then the question was, what was my spiritual awakening? I was sober about 3 years at the time, and I was speaking up in Apple Valley one night and coming down. It was a beautiful night. And I realized I never had it so good. Life was good. And then the thought came to me. When I came to this program 3 years before that, I was a very selfish, self-centered person. Now, as the result of meeting the conditions of the 11 steps, I'm God-centered and not self-centered. And God is doing for me today what I couldn't do for myself. I have a beautiful life, and I've never had it so good. So I know it works. Now, after having that spiritual awakening, what do I do? What is the knowledge of God's will for me? It comes in the next two stanzas of the 12th step. And it says, after having had a spiritual... No, we try to carry this message to the alcoholic. Hopefully I've carried this message that's in the book tonight. Or I've done it to the best of my ability. Maybe the next time I'll do it better. And we practice these principles in all of our affairs. Then the question is, what are these principles? The principle is the solutions we have now to living. And there's over 500 of them in the big book. Now, for our new friends, I want to give you the first 6 principles that were given to me. And the first principle my sponsor gave me was, today is the day you don't drink. And he says, no matter what happens, a drink of booze will never make it better. And I said, how do you know? He says, we have all tried it. I would say that 90% of the people in this room have been back out to drinking. And it didn't work because we're back here tonight. So it doesn't work to go back there and drink. We know that. We've proven it. The second principle he gave me was, he says, today's the day you go to a meeting. And he said a lot of meetings made it easy, a few made it hard, and none made it impossible. I go to a meeting every day. And he says, when you can't go to a meeting, there's 44 meetings in print in the back of the big book. You read a meeting in the back of the big book. The third principle he gave me was, today is the day you study your big book. I said, I read the big book. He says, I never want you to read that big book. He says, that's dangerous. Because you'll read into that book what you want it to say, not what it says. You study the black print, and not white print or between the lines. You study the meaning behind the words. And he says, then a program will format itself with guidelines and principles for you to live by. He was right. The fourth principle he gave me was, today's the day you call your sponsor. I said, what's a sponsor? He says, is a person you practice telling the truth to. He says, alcoholics are liars, cheats, and thieves. And they don't mean to be, but that's the way their life has, because the polarity has been reversed to negativism. So, you need one person. There's no way I could come into this room and tell the truth when I was new. Because the first thing I would see, look at all those pretty gals, I better try to impress them. And I would lie like a man letting out a rope. And I had no gumption about it, I'd just do it. It was so natural for me to lie that it was a pleasure to lie. Because I was deceiving people. I didn't like people. Now we need one person we practice telling the truth. So your sponsor is a person you never lied to. And when you get comfortable telling the truth to your sponsor, then you take it into the meetings. In the old days, in my sponsor's day in the meetings, for the first 9 months, you weren't allowed to speak in a meeting. You had to listen. Because he says every time you opened your mouth, you're lying anyhow. So, we learn to listen. And then we learn to tell the truth. And then we go into the meetings and tell the truth. Then we take that into our homes and on the job and into our communities. And one day we're finding we can tell the truth. Do you know, if you're truthful and honest for 90 days, it becomes a habit. All you do is practice truth and honesty for 90 days and it becomes a habit. You never have to practice it after that. It becomes a habit. Just like lying and deception, dishonesty. You practice that for 90 days, it becomes a habit. Why do you think we tell the newcomers 90 meetings in 90 days? Because at the end of 90 days, going to meetings every day, they're in the habit of going to meetings. So they'll keep coming back. And they'll get sobriety. The fifth principle he gave me was, today is the day you expect a miracle in your life. And I asked him what a miracle was, and he says, a miracle is a prayer you thought God had forgotten to answer. He says, remember that Sunday morning when you yelled out for God's help? And you asked to be relieved from the bondage of self and from alcohol? Have you drank since that? And I said, no. He says, you renew that request every day in your life. And I said, how long do I have to keep doing it? He says, until you die of something else. Keep renewing it. So I keep renewing it every day. I ask God to keep me sober. And I thank Him at night for doing it. The sixth principle He gave me was, today's the day you improve your conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation. I do that on a daily basis. And then there's a seventh principle that I added on. I was speaking at an AA convention in Edmonton, Canada some years back, and they introduced me to an old-timer who had 42 years on the program and went out and got drunk. And it was a horrible-looking sight. I got him in the corner. I said, Joe, for God's sake, tell me what happened. And there were tears in his eyes as he said. He says, young man, I had too many years in AA and not enough meetings. Newcomers, remember, a lot of meetings make it easy, a few make it hard, and none make it impossible. I wonder what you're going to do. Thank you for my sobriety.